Hello, and welcome to the Conscious Communion podcast, where we traverse through the inner dwellings of the human experience through conversation. I'm your host, Danae. Join me as we explore the interconnection of creativity and community. Katie Hackett is an extraordinary woman hailing from the enchanting island of Maui, Hawaii. Now residing in Oceanside, California, Katie is a new mom to an adorable 8-month-old. Katie's path to motherhood was a profound and transformative experience. Beyond being a devoted mother and daughter, Katie is also a loving wife, finding strength and support in her partnership. With a voice that resonates with emotion, Katie also has an incredible gift for crafting heartfelt lyrics. She is a talented singer and songwriter, with her music reflecting her life's journey. Beyond her passions and purpose, Katie devotes her gifts to world-renowned life strategist Tony Robbins. In every aspect, Katie embodies strength and resilience through her unwavering commitment to honesty and truth. Her journey to becoming a mom has shaped her into the remarkable woman she is today. A loving wife, a devoted mother, a gifted artist, and a true friend. Through her music, her creativity, and her honest spirit, Katie continues to leave an incredible mark on the world, inspiring others to embrace their own beautiful and challenging journey. Katie is my best friend's best friend, so therefore we are in sisterhood and in community with one another, and I am so grateful to know and love her. She inspires me deeply, and I am so honored to have her in this space. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you. Thank you. So happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Katie. I know it has been quite the journey. You went from making music and releasing your first song to soon after having your son.
Yes.
And what a creative journey that's been, because creating life force energy through bringing forth a baby and bringing forth beautiful music has just been such a portal for you, I'm sure.
It really has. Yeah. I mean, creating our greatest gift in life so far, has been our son, Kevin and I, and that on the heels of creating and releasing music that has always been a big part of my life, but they were definitely intertwined and, on the same path of creation that I needed to kind of have that within myself and kind of birth that for me, the music side, because it was a dream that I had, since I was a little girl to be able to release something. It's on Spotify, which is wild. But I felt like I really needed that for me. And then wanting to become a mom as well was for me, but it was actually really beautiful timing that I was able to have that piece, just in advance. And it's actually we'll get there, but the connection of like the lyrics that were in that song called Birds on a Wire, which was one of the songs that I created with Marbs and Evan Casey on Desert Hearts Black. It was about the spirit world communicating with me in the form of birds. I found my whole life they've communicated with me in that way, and it's about them, perched up on the telephone wire and then coming down, landing on my doorstep, and feeling like they were carrying a message from the spirit world, and then me being able to kind of communicate back with them. But I'll touch on that maybe a little bit later in our chat. But the messages that I got from them early on, I feel like they've been watching me, and spirit and, source has been watching me from that moment until, having my son here, and really helping me along the way. So it's really been a powerful just joint partnership between both of those things that I birthed, essentially.
That's so beautiful. And being from Maui, I would be curious, do you think that having that deep connection with the mother, the land, has been an integral piece to you having that deep connection with spirit and the creative force life energy that has constantly moving through you on so many different iterations of how you express yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Growing up there ever since I was a little girl, all the way until I was 18, you're outside playing in the dirt and, covering it all over your body. You're playing in the sand, in and out of the water, waterfalls, on trails. And I often tell people, we didn't grow up with like professional sports teams. So it wasn't something that we had in the house. The TV wasn't on all the time. It was more so, making mud pies outside or, running through the trees and making little fairy gardens and flower crowns and, making forts and stuff. So I definitely feel like that relationship with nature has been a part of my life. And I'm very grateful to my parents for allowing that to be. That was where they wanted to raise me. And, people are always like, wow, that's so, incredible. What was it like? What was it like to live there? And honestly, the point that I often lead with is nature and having the access to it and having the respect for it. And, just understanding what that means, how water is a very precious resource. You want to pick up your trash after you leave the beach, leave no trace, leave it better than you found it. And all of those things have just been a part of my life ever since I was a little girl. And so, yes, I think that the connection in even my song lyrics are a lot about that and nature. And growing up too, the connection to source or spirit or universe, that was always kind of what I found true for me. I didn't grow up in a very religious background, even though that was what kind of my parents' upbringing. They wanted me to be able to grow up and kind of be able to find that on my own. So we live in a home that's definitely much more spiritual than I'd say religious or necessarily by the book. And that has been a really beautiful experience as well. Just so much more free and just who I am by nature. I don't really like the rules and like, I want to do my own thing. And like, I don't want to be told what to do. And I've been like that way ever since I was little. So that just felt very natural to me. And my mom is very much that way till this day, just in terms of, calling in your guardian angels, higher power, spirit, and being able to communicate with that as a very real thing. And as I've gotten older, being able to understand that, people call it manifesting or setting intentions. And I've seen it firsthand, what you communicate and what you put out there into the universe is listening, the source is listening, and spirit is able to give back to you what you put out. And I feel like my life, I'm so blessed that I feel like I've designed my life in that way. Like, and it seems like maybe a little too woo-woo, probably not for this audience, but I mean, down to, my husband and my house where I live and my friends and being able to create and release music. And so, yeah, I really think that, I think that part of my upbringing and my roots, quite literally on Maui, and my parents for kind of instilling all of that in me from a young age.
That's so powerful. That's really powerful. And to be able to have that legacy to then now bring it into your son's life.
Yeah.
That's an incredible testament to time, to being able to break free from the paradigms that most structures are, cognizant of. I think so many of us are trying to figure out what that looks like for us. But being that you've already trudged that path, I would love for you to just share a little bit more about what that's looked like for you, how you do that for yourself, because creating can be real sticky.
Yeah. I mean, the word like faith is something I think that's used in religion a lot. I also find it to be very true just for my own personal experience in kind of navigating, whether it's like the trust, inner knowing, being guided, all of those things I feel like are woven together. But for me, being able to it's like so much more than just like goal setting. It's like being very specific with what I want in my life and writing it down, looking at it, and then speaking it, and then speaking the truth to that, and then really believing that it's going to happen, and having that certainty has kind of been the structure that I've used in my life to get me kind of where I'm at in terms of relationships, jobs, and it's powerful. Like it's really, because I've seen it in my own life, and taking that further, what I've learned most recently with like the birth of my son and just the challenges that we went through to get here. I had to have, yes, all of those things. I had to have faith and trust and deep belief that everything was going to work out, and have that certainty and speak it out loud. But then there was this new layer that I feel like was almost like another level of my spirituality that I tapped into, was surrender. And that was, I feel like, was allowed me to kind of get through to the next level. I am someone by nature that really likes to have control over things in my life. And when you're met with challenges, whatever they may be, there's an element in, at least for Kevin and I, we're problem solvers, and like, we want to do the research, and we're going to find the best whoever, or read this article from this journal, or, ask people for their personal opinions. And, it's like we're doing our own like deep dive analysis into whatever the problem is. And we study and we research and we find the solution that's best for us. And then we move forward with that plan. And that also, that framework has worked for most of our life. But in this season of becoming parents, it wasn't that model that we had for what we knew worked in terms of like school or jobs or career or buying a house, that all worked in that part of our life. But this part was nowhere, like there wasn't a model. And like becoming new parents, obviously not having like the book that tells you everything about like what you do in tough situations. It was really the surrender of understanding like we weren't going to have the ability to have control over everything. And that was just like, that was a huge pivotal moment for both of us, because to go from someone that is used to this structure working your whole life of like, I know the equation to get to that moment of success or whatever point, whatever you're marking as like your outcome, where we didn't have that. And we really had to let go and truly talk to spirit and meditate and practice yoga and sit outside on our back porch and like listen to the birds, or drive out in nature and just like sit in the trees and like get bathed in the forest and, sit outside at night and look at the stars and, light a candle. Or there are so many other things that I felt like we tapped into just intuitively, of like all the books and all the studying and all the doctors and research was actually like, it was really overwhelming, which is really interesting, because for us, information is power, and that knowledge is very powerful and it feels empowering. But we needed to almost like let go of that model that had worked and tap into that connection with source and spirit and universe, and do that by way of nature. So like truly reconnecting to where it was when I was a little kid, and what I did for, enjoyment, and then taking that now as a place and a vehicle for finding out answers, that maybe, the books wouldn't be able to provide us. So it's kind of where I am today in terms of my spiritual journey, and realizing like the letting go of and the release and the surrender allowed us to get where we are. Because the more tight and like restrictive kind of parameters we put around it, the more resistance we were feeling. And it just feels yucky. You know, when you feel those like moments of you're like, you get really hot or like your body tenses up and it's like, okay, what is this resistance I'm feeling? Like you have an opportunity to actually, we're aware of it, which is great. So I think processing that self-awareness, and then you have the choice, right? To be able to like continue to hold tight or, you know, let go. And we had to do that. Oh my God, we had to do that so many times. And yeah, it's really challenging, but it was really beautiful to be able to come out on the other side. And again, Kevin and I, it's like, we liken it to like a new level in like, I don't know, in life and in our spiritual practice. Yeah, and we were able to do it together.
That's so special. And Kevin is such an incredible man. I'm so grateful to know and love both of you because you are teachers in this sphere, right? I'm not a mother yet, and Caitlin's not a mother yet, and many of your inner circle, they haven't had that model from the friend groups, right? So you're the initiator. You are setting the tone for this new path forward for whoever is going to be inducted into the same journey of motherhood, right? So thank you for wearing that hat well, and thank you for doing it with so much grace because, yeah, I can imagine the challenge that it's been. And I think that's a good segue for you to share whatever feels safe for you, just about what the experience was like for you and Kevin to conceive and go through the process of everything else.
Yeah. Well, thank you for allowing me to share it. This will be the first time that I'll be sharing this publicly. So I also appreciate the safe space of this community for just understanding that this is just my experience, and everybody's experience is different. And this isn't to say that what we did was right or wrong. It's just what is. And so, yeah, I thank you for allowing me to share it because, you know, we sure were not prepared. We were not, I feel like, given the heads up in terms of actually what can happen. You know, you see on social media or on even just your friends' birth announcements, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, I had this baby, or, oh my gosh, pregnancy was amazing. And it was, oh my gosh, we weren't even trying. We just got pregnant. You know, there's so many different stories that you hear, people share. And that's so exciting. You know, every single one of those moments, those moms and dads should never feel like they can't share that truth for them and feel celebration for that. And it's also true that it's not that easy for everyone else. You know, everybody has their own journeys in getting there. And really the intention of sharing this is to have other moms and dads feel that they're seen in that experience, whatever it looks like for them. And so for us, it was, it took us, you know, about a half a year to actually, you know, conceive, which again, you go to the comparison of like, well, should I even say that? You know, some people have been trying for 3 years and they're still not pregnant. But yes, because every month that goes by, any woman that's gone through this, you're just thinking like, what's wrong? Why is this not working? Because you're taught how easy it is, right? In school, it's like, oh, if you have sex in sex ed, you're either going to get pregnant or you're going to get an STD. And it's like, you don't want either of those. So it's like, we scare people away from like having sex when actually it's like, it actually doesn't happen the first time, you know, like for some people it does. And again, that's great. Should still celebrate that. But for us, it didn't. And so we were just trying to investigate what that was. You know, we both did our own rounds of like testing, and, you know, my levels were great. Kevin's levels were great. We did this procedure that they put some dye like up in my uterus to check my fallopian tubes. And after that procedure, they say, you know, you have like 25% of chance of, you know, increased conception. So that ended up happening for us. through the process of that imaging, I actually learned that my uterus is, it's a septate uterus, meaning like a part of my uterus is connected to itself. So like the septate of your nose and your tongue, that kind of like tougher connective tissue. My uterus is essentially in like the shape of a heart. So they were saying that might have been some reasons of why the implantation wasn't able to happen on, whichever side maybe it was trying to. But sure enough, after that little clean out, we got pregnant. And I was learning a lot about my body at that time because I had painful periods for a very, very long time. And I was curious, was this septate maybe the reason that I had such painful periods? There's not a lot of research for women that have painful periods, just in terms of, what you can do, unless it's, you have to go under the knife and they have to look at, if you have fibroids or, you can get ultrasounds, they have to go in and like surgically remove those. But I was really curious. So I was like, I wonder if that was, again, just learning things about my body in my 30s that I was probably born this way, but I had never known. So of course we were very excited, that we had gotten pregnant, and my husband Kevin works in the field of genetics, and so some families choose at the 9-week mark to do a genetic test on their baby to see if there's any genetic abnormalities, and during that test you can also learn the sex of your baby. And so you just send out a blood test, and they send back, the information. And in the same appointment that we found out that we were having a girl, we also found out that there was an abnormality with her. But the abnormality was so rare, like it wasn't one of like the 6 that they test for, that it was kind of like an inconclusive test. And my OBGYN had said that he had honestly never even seen this before. So you could imagine Kevin and I's, reactions to that from your doctor, like not really being equipped to have that conversation with us, yet delivering some really, really monumental news. And so that was really challenging. And Kevin, is of course like has his data scientist hat on in terms of like, well, these tests, they tell you what's wrong and this test isn't telling us that. So it was confusing for him on obviously very many levels too. But they have a geneticist that you do like follow-up tests with to essentially figure out, what's going on. So what that entails is getting an amniocentesis, but you can't get that until further along in your pregnancy, because the fluid that the baby is in your uterus, there needs to be like a barrier essentially that protects that fluid, so that when they put the needle through your belly into your uterus to collect the fluid, that remains, intact, because there are risks of miscarriage with doing that. And that can't happen until week 14. So from week 9 to 14, we're just kind of, I'm maintaining a healthy pregnancy, still eating all the right stuff, and kind of just trying to figure out what's going on with our daughter. And so through that process, in talking with the geneticist, what we learned was that there was a chromosome that was missing, or it was kind of altered, and it was affecting the sex chromosome. And your sex chromosome for females is so important. It regulates all major functions of your body, not just your sex hormones, but your estrogen and how your body's going to be developing. So what we learned was each set of chromosomes has kind of like a a short piece and a long piece, and there's two of those that are matched together, and that's what the chromosomes have. And for her, what she had was a short chromosome and a long chromosome, and then like two long chromosomes. And what we learned through the process of that was that it resulted in a syndrome called Turner syndrome. It's just for females. And in uncovering, again, didn't know any of this stuff was even like a possibility. Every person that I had that did the tests, the genetic test, everything was fine. It's like, and here we are kind of living Kevin's just sort of, nightmare. And just in terms of going down this genetic odyssey in terms of figuring out what's happening with our daughter. What happens is usually edema happens. So something in your body swells to like block your heart, and then your heart stops working. The functions of like your kidneys, your major functions of your body, your heart, you don't get your reproductive organs. You won't be able to have children. You won't have your period. You would have to be on, shots and injections for growth. And it's just a lot of things. On average, you have like 10 to 12 doctors in your lifetime. And just monitoring all these things. So after the course of understanding all of that through the amniocentesis, and it's all the waiting in between, then you have to wait 2 weeks to get the results. And then it's like this long process. Kevin and I, we sat on our kitchen floor, and I will never forget this night, where we had to make the decision on what we wanted to do. And again, for some parents, this wouldn't even be a decision that they would have to make. And for other parents, it's the hardest decision that you'll ever have to make in your life. And, we decided to release her soul from this physical body that we didn't feel like she deserved. And we had to do a lot of soul searching and ultimately deciding what we were going to be able to provide for her as her parents, and also what we were going to be able to handle ourselves. And so to anyone that's listening, that has ever had judgment about somebody having to make this decision, it's not something you make lightly. And I'm so grateful that I live in a place that I have the right to make this decision. Meanwhile, while we were making this decision, the Roe v. Wade stuff was happening at the Supreme Court. And I feel like my biggest soul lesson this lifetime, but also previous lifetimes, is to remove the judgment that I think other people have of me. I feel like I've gone a lot of my life doing things because it's what I should do. Or if I don't do it, then these people will think this. Or if I do it, then these people will think whatever they're going to think. It's like I'm making decisions for somebody else and I'm not making them for myself. And this is the time I really felt like I was taking my power back to make this decision for myself and for her. And that's just what we feel was best for us. So we decided to release her soul, and after that process, we were ready to try again. And again, for everybody, that's such a different decision. Some people need a lot more time. For me, I wanted to have a baby in my arms, and our doctors were saying, you can get pregnant, as soon as you're ready, essentially. So we waited a month and we tried again, and we got pregnant with our son. And of course, going into that process, doing the same steps, wanting to do the genetic testing just to make sure. Kevin and I also did our own set of genetic testing to make sure that, there wasn't anything inherently that we were going to be passing down, like again and again. And we were fine. And we cleared that. And then I remember the day that we were going to get his results back. At this point, we didn't know he was a boy yet. We were just going to get the results back, and we were going to have my mom give us the announcement, because I felt like I was kind of robbed of that the first time, because the celebration was met with so much anguish. And so I wanted to bring that moment back for myself. That was another place to get my power back in that sense. But when we were getting his genetic testing, we had the gender blocked out. And it started raining. And to kind of flash back a little bit, the morning that we were going to release her soul. And this is the term that I've just found easier for me to share it. And it's just like a visual for me, because I know she's still here. She's here with me right now as I'm sharing this story. I know it. But it was raining that day. It was pouring down rain. And we came back, and it was this super big storm. And then it's like the skies had cleared, and what we thought we saw was like an angel in the clouds. Like, it looked very much like that. And just, so this day that we were getting the results, there was a raven, and there's a lot of crows around here, but not like a raven stands out differently. It's much bigger, and just his plumage is different. And he was perched high on the top of this palm tree, on the spear of this palm tree stick that was sticking out at the top of our tree. And we were looking at that as we were pulling it up, and then it started to rain. And we got the results that everything was fine. And, in terms of his genetics. And we went outside, and we had a good cry, and just felt like she was really there with us. And then from that moment forward, there was these hawks that live. There's a 200-year-old oak tree right outside here. And these hawks had a nest, and there was a baby hawk. Again, at the same time, all this was happening with my son. And the baby hawk was learning how to fly, and the mom was teaching him how to hunt. This was over the course of my pregnancy. And this family of three, this hawk family, these Cooper hawks, live here. And I feel in moments of I think about her, and I hear them, or they'll fly in front of my office window, or they'll be sitting up on the post in front of our cars. And so that's going back to what I was sharing initially about the birds and their communication with me of kind of combining the spirit worlds. I think that they're very much communicating. So, we have an amazing pregnancy. I really, truly enjoyed pregnancy. I understood what people were talking about. I loved it. I thought it was really a beautiful thing. I was so connected to him. And, towards the end of the pregnancy, I wanted to be able to go into birth spontaneously. I'm sure as a lot of women do. And, you have these preferences that you write out, and our doula's there, and you're talking about what you're envisioning for that day in terms of bringing your child into the world. And there was just so much excitement around it, because I really felt like this birth was going to heal a lot of what had happened previously. And that was just kind of my own cycle and thinking about it that way. And, so towards the end, 41 and a half weeks, I was induced because of high blood pressure. And this is kind of the start of all the things that I didn't really know could happen and how serious they are. So high blood pressure is a really serious thing. And it's called preeclampsia when you're pregnant. And usually what happens is like when you deliver the baby, your blood pressure goes back to normal. But I was in a 2-day labor, bringing him into the world, induced in a variety of ways that I just wasn't progressing. And so towards the end of that 2 days, in pushing him out, he started to lose like oxygen. And so as soon as he came out, he had to be taken away. So that moment that I was really, again, and kind of going back to that control, like wanting to have for myself of like, I was going to have him on my chest and we were going to have, the golden hour and like no one was going to talk to us and we were going to have this beautiful time. I didn't have that. It was quite the opposite. He was rushed off to the NICU. And from then on, he had a series of things that had happened to him. He wasn't able to breathe initially because of the oxygen, and he had ingested meconium, which again is a normal thing. But for him, it was a little bit more serious for his respiratory. Then they observed, a couple of what they thought were seizures. When you hear seizures, that's like a really scary thing, especially in your newborn. And so because of that, he needed to be transported to a different hospital. And the hospital that he was transported to is Radies. And thankfully where we live in San Diego, that it's one of the best children's hospitals in the country. And, he gets hooked up to an EEG machine where they're scanning for the seizure activity, but they want to be able to see it on the screen to be able to say, yes, that's in fact a seizure, which they did. And so they put him on seizure medication. And that stopped the initial seizures. And so Kevin went with him. I stayed at the hospital because I had just given birth 12 hours earlier. And, again, another moment of separation in terms of like, okay, I don't have my son or my husband. I had to watch my son be taken away by the check team, put into an ambulance and taken down to another location, without me. And then the next day I was able to go down and meet him, at his bedside. And, we understood that there were seizures, but they didn't know why. And I just want to pause here. I feel like it's like a lot. I feel like I'm like really unloading a lot. And I just want to make sure that, I don't know, is it okay?
No, it's beautiful. Thank you for being vulnerable. It's more than okay. This is your story. This is your experience. And I think that even knowing you and knowing how you and Kevin have prevailed through such a challenge, that in itself is medicine to people. It's medicine to me. Okay. So thank you for being vulnerable.
Thank you. Just sharing it like top to bottom like this, it's just, it's a lot. And we all have our stuff, but thank you for allowing me to share it.
Of course.
So after observing the seizures, the neurology team, we were able to get him on the medicine, and then we were able to, he didn't have any more, and he hasn't had one since the second day of his life. But the doctors wanted to find out what was causing the seizures. So he had to be seizure free for 48 hours in order to get an MRI. And mind you, he's 2 days old. And because of that, he has to stay still in the MRI machine so that they can get a good image of his brain. So we were able to get that. And what we learned was that he had suffered a brain bleed through the delivery process. And interestingly enough, about 80% of babies experience a brain bleed. Even they can experience them through C-section. But they often don't get imaged because they don't show the symptoms that Lander showed. So you or I may have even had one, but it didn't result in seizure activity or anything like that. So he experienced this brain bleed on the left side of his brain, and it was near the ventricle space. So, or in the ventricle space, rather. So the ventricle space is like the open part in the middle of your brain that's filled with cerebral spinal fluid, which washes your brain essentially every day with this fluid. And so we were kind of just triaging, okay, brain bleed, like, what does that mean? That sounds really scary. And they said, his immune system will go in and kind of heal and eat away that blood. Like, that's how, like, incredibly powerful we are as humans. And to just look at your baby to know, like, first of all, just looking at your baby and looking at his eyes and his fingers and how beautiful he is as a human being. And then it's almost like compartmentalizing that beauty and like this gorgeous being that we created by this crazy miracle of all the things working out right. But then really needing to focus on the acute problems at hand, which were these issues. And so I'm so grateful for Kevin because he does have that science background. He was very, he was just very talented and skilled at asking the right questions to the doctors and being able to break down what they're saying so that I could understand it. And I recognize that a lot of parents don't have that. They don't know what to even ask, and you're in the most stressful situation of your life, and you're worried about your child, the health and them surviving, and being able to articulate, thoughtful responses and being able to even absorb what they're saying. Like Kevin, that was his like superpower in that moment, and being really able to disseminate information to me and then to our families. So that was just, I'm so grateful for him in that space. So continuing with the brain bleed, following kind of where that's coming from, the doctors kind of said like the seizure is almost a symptom of the bleed. And once the bleed stops, the symptoms will stop. So it's not like Lander was going to have seizures his whole life. It was just once the blood cleared up, that was fine. So we're like, okay, that's great. So we'll just temporarily have him on seizure medication until that heals, which is, a few months, on the long end. In some hospitals, they would take you off even sooner. But so he was on seizure medication for the first, 3.5 months of his life. But once we decided that was our path, we thought that was kind of it. Like, okay, we'll heal that. He's in here. We just need to continue on this journey of just keeping him rested and monitored. And while that happened, he spiked a fever. And fevers for babies that young is really scary and dangerous as well. So we had to put him on a round of antibiotics, but because they couldn't figure out where the fever was coming from, because he had every test, we did all the blood tests, we did, the cultures that we needed to, like urine samples, like everything and everything was coming back like normal. So they were like, okay, the only thing that could potentially be causing a fever would potentially be an infection of his brain, which is meningitis. And that could have been caused from the meconium in his body for too long. But the only way to test if that is in fact what's infected is we need to get a sample of cerebral spinal fluid. So in order to get a sample of that, they needed to do a spinal tap, a lumbar puncture. Now he's 2 weeks old, maybe a week and a half old. And they do it by sight. They're not doing it with imaging. Like it was what I learned. Like they're trained to go in there and just do it by feel and which is wild that they're doing that. So they tried it, but it wasn't successful. And so because it wasn't successful, meaning when you take out cerebral spinal fluid, the way they explained it, it's supposed to be like champagne colored and like more like that sort of effervescent. Whereas this had like blood matter in it. So the doctors it was kind of confusing a little bit. It's like, was that just from the tap was not successful and you only got blood, or was there blood in his cerebral spinal fluid? So then we're like on that odyssey, like felt like we were on a game of House, or on the show House, like trying to figure out what was going on with him. But the cerebral spinal fluid tap created a bruise. So we actually couldn't go back to get more. So that put us in the hospital, or the NICU, longer, because we needed to now finish a 2-week protocol of antibiotics. And that was just like, we had to do that. And the last day of the antibiotics was Christmas Eve. And like them coming to tell us that when we thought we were like on the clear, just needing to manage the seizure medication, like we were going to be good, like he was doing good. It was this fear that spiked. As that's happening, like as we're doing, like going back to like the MRI stage, I'm standing at his bedside. This is 3 days after I gave birth. And I'm reading a pamphlet that they give you when you discharge at the hospital about preeclampsia. And I'm like reading all the bullets, like dizzy, lightheaded, seeing spots, pain in your right side abdomen. And I'm talking, like Lander's resting. And I talked to Kevin and I was like, hey, I'm kind of like experiencing all of these things. And he was like, really? And so we told the NICU nurses, and they're like, well, you should definitely go get, your blood pressure taken to see, because I told them that I had a high blood pressure towards the end. And so because in the NICU, they don't have adult size blood pressure arm cuffs, I went down to the Rady's Children's Hospital emergency room, and they took my blood pressure, and it was 190 over 110, which is really, it's very, very dangerous. And I didn't really understand that part. I also wasn't taking my blood pressure at home because I obviously didn't, this is one of those other things, was not given the heads up. Ladies, it is so important to check your blood pressure. What this entailed was me getting admitted to the hospital again for 4 days. And they had to give me, they call it the MAG, but it's magnesium sulfite for 24 hours on an IV drip, so that I personally wouldn't have my own seizures or stroke. So here I am, I'm in the hospital down the street from Lander in the hospital in the NICU. Kevin's in between with Lander during the day. My mom came in to be with me during the day, and then Kevin would stay with me at night. This is like when my milk's coming in. So I'm pumping, Kevin's taking my milk, bringing it over to Lander. Again, all those things of like breastfeeding, wanting to bond, having that skin to skin time. Like I wasn't having that because I was in the hospital myself, and now what I'm realizing is like, and I hope this doesn't sound dramatic just because it's true, but like I also could have died. And I'm just now realizing that, how serious that is. There was a track and field athlete in Texas. She was an Olympian. She was a mom, and this just came out in the news. And she died at home due to complications of preeclampsia. And yeah, just recently, just feeling I'm still processing that. That's going to be a while for me to process that. But, so I get out again, that's around the time that we think Lander's going to get out, like, and then the fever spikes. So then I'm back over there with him. And then, each day in the NICU, they're measuring everything. They're measuring his head circumference. They're measuring the weight of his diapers. And NICU parents out there, I'm with you. It is so challenging to be in there. So they're measuring his head, and his head, started to increase in size, in circumference. And it was increasing at a rate that they were suspicious maybe something else was happening. So we got an ultrasound and learned that his ventricle space was actually swelling because the blood matter from the initial brain bleed had clogged the drain, essentially, like if you think about a piece of food clogging the drain of a sink, it was clogging the space where the fluid was supposed to drain. All these things are like the 1% chance. And the doctors kept telling us that. Like, it was like, okay, either this could happen and this could happen. And like, it was the left turn for us every time. It was just like how, and they like, honestly, the neurosurgeons and neurologists were like, you guys need a break. Like, you guys need a win. Like they see a lot of stuff, you know, like just in terms of like how much was like being uncovered here. So thankfully, we were going to be in there because of the antibiotics. Thankfully, they weren't able to take that lumbar puncture, because had they done that, we learned that like the pressure differential between them removing something down below, like more fluid, could have put more pressure on his brainstem. Again, all of these things in the moment, you're like, how is this happening to us? And then realizing like, wow, this is actually like really guided. And the amount of prayers, we had prayer circles everywhere happening in the world, and back to the connection with spirituality, like the power of prayer and everyone coming together. And each day we would list our wins and like whatever the challenge was. And then we'd create a mantra and we'd have everybody just focus on that. Like at one point it was about, like clear the flow, and having everybody just focusing on Lander, like clearing that flow, and us putting our hands on him, and understanding that like externally we were searching for like healers, like who could come, like can anybody put their hands on him, like having people do healing sessions from Australia, from like the East Coast, like anyone that we could get to like focus their energy, and understanding that actually Kevin and I were healers. Like we were healers to Lander in that space, like putting our hands on him, praying with him. My milk was healing him, and really believing that in myself. And so the swelling continued to the point that now we're talking about operating room time, and we're talking with the neurosurgeons about brain surgery on our now 3-week-old son. And so they gave us 2 options. And so the first option was a process called an ETV, and they go in the top of the baby's head into the fontanelle, like the soft spot. That's where they were taking the ultrasounds from before the sutures of the actual skull fused together. And that's where they can go in with like a little camera and like a scope and essentially break up the blood matter, clean out. It's called a lavage. They clean out the brain, cerebral spinal fluid. Because at this point, with how much blood matter was in it, it was really, like I said, you want it to be like that champagne. It was more like foggy, like milk sort of color. It was really dark. So they cleaned it out, and they created another hole, another flow point for them to go through. And so wheeling him, understanding that's the process, and wheeling him down to the emergency room and being with him, and sending him off, and that surrender, that trust in the doctors, and the gratitude that we need to express for Brady's and the surgeons and modern medicine to be able to help our son. We needed to just release to that. Like back at the antibiotic stage of this journey, I was like, I didn't want my son on antibiotics. Like, go back to like when he checked in for the NICU, like I didn't want him to have a pacifier. Like I didn't want him to drink out of a bottle so soon. And all these things that I didn't want, or I thought that I didn't want, my mind thought that I didn't want, was actually all the things that Lander needed in order to continue to thrive. Like if a pacifier was going to let him be soothed in that moment, so be it. If a bottle was going to allow him to be fed because I physically couldn't be there, of course, why wouldn't you do that? If the antibiotics were going to clean the potential infection in his brain that he had or hadn't, of course you would do that. And then this last phase of surgery. If you're saying my son needs brain surgery, like, yes, please take him. Just please help him. And so coming out of that surgery, there's a 50% chance that it's going to work. Because the hole that they made can potentially fill back up as much as they tried to have cleaned it out. And you'll know within 24 hours. And some other symptoms, he couldn't keep down his food. So there were just other markers that like he wasn't going to be able to come home, if he can't eat. So the next option that they gave us was a brain surgery that involved putting in a VP shunt. And a shunt is a permanent device. And so Kevin and I had this was that resistance point again. Like we met so many of them of like, okay, he's going to have this permanent device for the rest of his life. Something that's put into his brain when he's 3 weeks old that we're going to now manage and help him manage for the rest of his life with doctors that are going to be that are going to be a part of our family. And they're going to get to know Lander over the course of his life. They gave us 100% certainty that this would fix what was happening. The reason we went the ETV route first was because if he didn't need the permanent device and that did work, then he wouldn't need the shunt. But it didn't work. And so we needed to get a shunt 2 days later. And really needed to release that control. We asked a ton of questions. They kind of knew us by like, oh, you guys have really good questions. Like they need to dedicate some like serious time to us. But we learned, he's not going to be limited from anything that he wants to do in life. He can play contact sports. He can play football. He can surf. He can dive. He can skydive. He can whatever he wants. He's not limited by this shunt. And the technology of them hasn't changed too much. But it's one of the most common brain surgeries that they do. So that was our last sort of like, okay, if this is really going to be what he needs, then let's do it. We're going to make shunts cool. It's going to be like his superpower that he has. And he came out of that, and literally coming out of the surgery and looking at him, I knew immediately that it had worked. His eyes were brighter. He was eating, and it was just a matter of healing the sutures. And so now he has a permanent shunt in his head. It's kind of the size of a USB, and it's under the skin, like right behind his ear. And then there's a tube that runs down his neck and across over his breastbone and empties into his abdomen. And so any extra fluid that his brain wouldn't be able to release on their own or on its own, he gets support of that with the shunt. That was on the 22nd. The neurosurgeons release people same day that have shunts, if not next day. And so the 23rd was his recovery day, and we were home. We were home on Christmas Eve. So it's just, and he is thriving. He is thriving, you guys. He is hitting all of his milestones. We have support of occupational therapists and physical therapists, again, through the state of California. We pay into a program called Early Start. If you live in California, please look it up. Your doctors can refer you to this amazing program where you get resources to be able to help you understand what sort of movement and mobility issues you may be up against, what cognitive issues you may be up against. You get an assessment, and then you work on those goals. And because, again, we're such goal-oriented people, we are like doing these exercises every day. We're super committed, and they're seeing him develop as a neurologically, I don't like to use the like sound baby would, like anyone without this injury. Essentially, he's operating and functioning as such. The concern was because of where the brain bleed was located that he would have some mobility issues on his right side. But we're not seeing any of that. So yeah, we're just like, that's just like a yay moment. And yeah, that brings us to where we're at today. And he is incredible. And he is so strong, and he is so resilient, and he is making me stronger. And Kevin and I's relationship has never been more united. Because I know a lot of what I shared, it isn't for everyone. And it could destroy a lot of relationships. It could destroy families. It could really segregate and separate people. But for us, it's brought my family, my friends, our bond even more closer together. And I want to thank everyone, you know, who you are, for just being in support of us and just not casting any judgment. Because it's been really challenging, but we're on the other side. Yeah. So that's a lot. Thank you, Danae.
I'm so proud of you. I thank you so much for speaking your truth and sharing your story. And really, so much of the takeaway is the surrender to me, because I too, and I think most people, right? Most people want, especially when it's their child, when it's their creation that is like their flesh and blood, you want to protect that at all costs. And there's so much of our analytical mind that wants to fix and go into that. But it sounds like the process for you and Kevin was really counterintuitive to all that maybe the old programs are running for you. And so now this has been an initiation for the two of you as parents to come into this new sense of self as parents and as a unit, to usher Lander into this beautiful new path as your baby, as your son. And I just want to honor you with all of that, with staying true to you, keeping your integrity firm within your heart center, because I know that it was so much of that.
Yeah.
And I'm just glad you're okay.
Thank you. Same. Yeah, and there's just feeling like the more I surrendered, the more that we were just held. We were held by our family, by spirit, where that also feels like counterintuitive, because Kevin and I are very much like do-it-yourself people. And there was a lot of conversations we had around like reliance and dependence on a device, reliance and dependence on doctors, reliance and dependence on medicine, for Lander, for his life. And shifting that mindset to gratitude, that we actually get to have these doctors in our life. We actually get to have a device that's going to help his brain and help him develop as he should. We get to have the access to medicine. That it just changed. Like, I just got chicken skin. It changed our perspective from almost like a feeling and indebted to, like we owe something to someone at the end of the day, to receiving that gift. Yeah, it was just, and where else can we do that in our life? Where it feels maybe like, I don't know, it's like, it was just such a lesson for us, that those, and again, people were saying that, you know, it's not going to be this hard all the time. You know, you guys are going to get through it. You guys are going to get through it. But like when you're in it, like you don't, it's like some days we were there every day for 21 days. And I know parents are there for much longer. And again, it's, if you have not been in the NICU, it's really hard to describe, because you're seeing all the other families come in. You want to keep their privacy, but also you want to like be there for them, but it's also, you can't because of like, you know, germs, and everybody has their own, you know, rooms. But you'd get days where you had really good news, And then other days where you thought nothing was going to happen. And then here you are checking in for surgery, you know, and it was like this giant like roller coaster. But the more we could remove our expectations, and this is kind of what I've been learning through my workspace, but to trade expectations for appreciation is a really simple and profound thing, because our expectation and my expectation of being a mom and what my labor was going to look like and what like birth right after and holding him was going to look like and what those first few days and weeks, like I wanted to do the first 40 days. Like I wanted to, and it was like everything that I had thought that I wanted in terms of my healing and my bonding time, it was the complete opposite of that. And I had to really, and I'm still working on that. It's going to be, this is the part of my healing for sure, this conversation, but getting to the point of understanding, like, maybe I got what I actually like needed, and the strength around this lesson around releasing control. Because as a parent, at least now I understand, like, he is his own being. He has his own path to carve out. I'm here to support and love and at times guide, but really he's steering his own ship, and I need to let him be his own person. We learned that through his healing. We're like, okay, Lander, like, you're going to get this fever now because you're telling us that something else is about to happen. You know, had we gone home, you know, or it's just all the things now in hindsight, it is what they say. Like, you do realize, you know, the moments of gratitude, even though when you're in the darkest times, you don't want to be like told, what can you be grateful for? You know, or like, what's the silver lining? Like that. Sometimes that's like the last thing you want to hear. But having gone through it, I'm now able to see like, wow, okay, being in there for longer was actually a blessing, and getting put on antibiotics until that time was a blessing, and having the shunt, and then everything we're going to be learning forward. You know, he's going to do things that he is very good at telling us what he likes and what he doesn't like. And I think that's just how he's been brought into this world, how his soul is meant to live. And who am I to tell him who he should and shouldn't be, and put that control, you know, on him. And so Kevin and I, again, big planners. We like have our calendar. You know this about us, just in terms of like scheduling is freaking hard. Getting on this conversation was hard. But I feel like for us to be able to let go of that, and through this experience, learning a little bit about that surrender, but really feeling it from the inside, it has been the greatest gift. And I don't think I would have learned the lesson had it not hit so hard and had it not been so challenging. I think that happens in life though, right? I'm sure you've experienced things like that, where you're maybe taught the same thing over and over and over again. And life is kind of like, okay, let's try this again. Like, let's try this again this way. Like, oh, let's have this person kind of test you in this way. And it's like, nope, still not getting it. Okay, we're going to give you something really big and you're going to break through. And I feel like that was it for Kevin and I in terms of this surrender piece. And we're learning to do it, you know, more and more every day. You know, we've had to go to radies a few times, even between now and when he was born, just in terms of, you know, adjusting the shunt, or, you know, and things are going to happen, you know, he's going to get sick, he's going to get hurt, you know. And I think that just the normal baseline at which new parents worry, we had that times all this other stuff that we were kind of brought into this initiation. It's almost like our initiation into this parent club with. But the gift that we got out of it was that release and letting go, and the trust, like the trust in him, the trust in Lander, that like, I trust that you are able to heal yourself too. Like the trust that he knows in his soul what he is capable of. And he has blown us away. He's so special. He's going to do some amazing things. I'm sure every parent says that too, but he really is, the way he came into this world.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even just The way he looks around, his eyes alone tell a story. He's got very soulful eyes. And
yeah, they're for sure. Everybody's always like, he's so alert.
Very alert.
Yeah. Yeah. He's definitely, he's here to make some change and make his presence known for sure. And we're grateful to just witness it and be a part of it and just to support him where we can, but just kind of let him do his thing. And what a gift. And yeah, it's just coming out of this time where it was really triaging him and what he needed, and feeling like, okay, we're in a good spot, like just in terms of his development, and it was, it was 6 months of really intense, like, need to focus on him. I was able to then go back to work. And then now I feel like, even just with the start of this conversation, like, I'm now going to be focused on my healing. I think with moms, going through postpartum depression, I'm still managing my blood pressure. Like, interestingly enough, it's still something I take medicine for. And I'm hopeful that one day I won't have to take medicine for it anymore. But it's balancing that with the anxiety, depression that just comes with the change of hormones. Not for everyone, but it's a common thing. And I think just being okay with talking about it. Just, again, I had to kind of like focus on him first. And now I'm focusing on myself in terms of my own healing, which it feels really good. And that looks different again for everybody, whether that's therapy, whether that's medication, whether that's, plant medicine, whether that's, deep conversations with friends. I think just finding what that is for you. And, as much as we can, I think the kinder we can be to ourselves and the kinder we can be to one another when when people are going through really challenging times. Just sending love. Sending love is it's felt, because we felt it. And I truly believe it helped to heal Lander, and it helped to give him the strength that he needed to fight. Yeah, it's powerful.
Absolutely. It sure is. And I know you had a team of lovers that were supporting and praying for you amidst everything you were going through, and we're still in your corner,
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would love for you to share any slice of wisdom from your experience, whether it be from motherhood or the challenge that you endured with Lander in the process, whatever feels ever present for you.
Yeah. The power of partnership. And I think I'll speak for myself. I am kind of like, I want to do it myself sort of person. Like, I'm an only child. So I think I was like brought up that way in terms of being like fiercely independent and becoming a mom. You don't have to do it all alone. And partnership can look so many different ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be with like a husband or wife. Because I have personal friends that are doing this mom life solo by choice, but partnership can be friends, parents, family members, but just reaching out. It's really hard to ask for help when you need it sometimes, and being okay. You feeling like you want to be super mom and you want to get everything right and you want to do it all on your own. And I'm sure you can. I'm sure I could, but knowing that I could ask Kevin for his help, or ask my mom, or ask my friends whether it was a prayer or coming to help, clean or dropping off a meal, asking for help, and letting people know how to show up for you. Because all people want to do when you're going through a challenging time is love you, and they want to be there for you. And each one of your friends has their own, superpower. Like, I feel like Caitlin and Evan, they have been those friends for us that while we're the okay, here's our equation for, success, study XYZ, do this, take this course or whatever, get this promotion. They're the friends that help us be really present and find your team of people in terms of maybe find the things that you're not good at and find that in the people that you love. And those are the gifts that they can give to you. And for Caitlin and Evan, it was just their ability to keep us present, have us be grounded, light an incense, meditate. And I think that really is it for me. It's finding your people. I would not have been able to get through this without a community. And yeah, you don't have to do it alone, because then that feeling of being held, like I talked about before, it feels less heavy. You have people helping you with the emotional weight. And then when you're ready, you can come back to it yourself. And I'd say in addition to that, in processing trauma, it's okay also to put it in a box on the corner of your desk. You don't have to be living it and breathing it and telling the story in every detail, every moment. And it's okay if you want to, if that's part of your healing, that's really beautiful as well. But if you need to put it on your desk just so you can get through the day, or if you feel like you want to go laugh and watch a movie in the midst of your grief and your trauma, give yourself permission to do that. That is so healing. Or if you're experiencing great loss, and I know I felt this way, but you're experiencing great loss and you feel like you're not allowed to have joy because of whatever it is, whatever you're going through. While you're going through it, it may not feel like it, but just if you are listening and you are going through something, give yourself permission to find moments of joy for yourself. And it's okay to not be in it and so deep in it all the time. If you can put some of the weight into your friends and community to allow yourself to just take a cold shower or eat a fresh piece of fruit and just enjoy that moment. Just be really present in that. I hope that's helpful.
It was helpful for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can you share where people can find your music? I know it's
Sure.
just another iteration of who you are and all the magic that you bring forth into the world, but I would love for that to also be threaded into this.
Yeah, I hope to create more of it. I have so many things written down, and I want to get them out in song. But you can check us out on Spotify. The EP is called Birds on a Wire. It's also on Beatport, if you would like to purchase it, which would be very, very kind. But and then on the socials, it's Katie, Katie.Kilbride, Kilbride. But full disclosure, I have not posted there in a while with my latest creation, so hopefully we'll be back on there. But you can check out what I've been up to, and maybe see you guys on a dance floor soon. We're going to bring Lander with his earphones, and that's just a moment that I'm just so excited for him to go to his first concert and just experience that, what that feels like, and to just share that with him, share that part of life with him.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Katie. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and your willingness.
Thank you. Just like, whew, it's powerful. It's cathartic. And thank you for having me and just allowing me to share, and to this community just for being a safe space to do so. I thank you and I honor you. And I'm so freaking proud of you because you have created such a beautiful thing yourself. And so thank you.
Thank you, Katie. I love you.
I love you too.
Hey there, it's Danae again. Just wanted to say thank you for sharing your time and energy with me. If this podcast resonates, please like, subscribe, follow, and share if you're willing. Reviews help too, so if you're feeling the vibe, please leave a review where you can. Sending all the love. Peace.